Welcome to the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. I'm your host, Steph Wharton. Join me as we dive into how to become a widely in-demand CEO that prioritizes balance between life and business, isn't afraid of making the scary decisions that get you results you actually care about, and unapologetically breaks the rules to build the business and life of your dreams. Being visible is so much more than just showing up. I think a lot of you would have seen this already. I know. You would have seen this where there's different coaches or different experts in the online space who tell you that you have to be on Reels and that now is the time to get on Reels, right? I've talked about that before. We've kind of beat that down to the ground. It's dust, it's done. But whether it's Reels, whether it's people telling you that you have to show up and do Instagram lives, or that you have to post every single day so that people see you, or that you have to go on stories every single day, it's not so much about showing up. What I believe to be true is that it's more about visibility is about finding out how to show up over just showing up for the sake of it. Because we don't want you to be consistent, but then do it in a way that just doesn't feel aligned and that feels forced and that isn't really serving you, because you're not showing up with the energy and the leadership and the confidence that you are very well capable of showing up with. Instead, when you start to figure out which ways you truly enjoy to show up with, that makes it easier and makes it more fun. So for example, myself, I love showing up through my podcast, through this method, this mode of essentially connecting with my community, connecting with you specifically. I love podcasts. I love summit speaking. I love any type of guest speaking interviews. Essentially, what I love about every one of these modes or platforms that I've just listed out for you is that they truly allow you to connect with people in a very real and intimate way. And what you'll notice is that all the different things that I listed are actually pretty damn different. Think about it, a podcast, that's just, in this case, it's just me. It's talking technically to a void, but it's talking to you one-on-one. I'm in your headphones. We're having a conversation. Sometimes I even ask you questions and I encourage you to reach out through Instagram, email, whatever you prefer, so that we can chit chat a little bit about what resonated for you, about what it was that I shared in that moment, or if you had anything else that perhaps was different to what I shared, but still really cool, insightful, and a fresh perspective. So we are essentially having a conversation. We're getting to know each other, even if most of it feels a little bit one-sided. When you reach out and when we start having those conversations separately off the podcast, that's where those relationships really deepen. And that's where I get to know you better inside and out. And it's how I get to better understand who you are, what you're like. And honestly, a lot of us ends up becoming friends, which is really freaking cool. And if that later turns on into, let's say, you become my client, or maybe, who knows, maybe I become yours, right? Who's to say that just because I'm the one with a podcast that everybody's going to buy from me? That's the cool thing about connections, is that the potential for whether it's business relationships or personal relationships are endless. It's really freaking fun. But that's podcasting. Then you have summits where you are public speaking, essentially, whether you're doing that in a live setting or a pre-recorded setting, depending on the type of summit, but you're essentially teaching to the masses. I say masses because there's obviously going to be some smaller summits, and those are really freaking cool because they're a little bit more intimate and you get to have more conversations with the attendees. But a lot of the summits that I attend, I'm speaking in front of thousands of people. I think recently, one of the biggest ones I spoke at, I was speaking in front of over 6,000 people, right? And that's pretty freaking impactful to be able to serve that many people, to share my expertise and to help them in some way inside of their business in a free format where they don't necessarily have to invest in my services, but they can still get that experience of what it's like to work with me and experience that transformation that comes with whatever training I put together for that specific summit. So you can already see how podcasting and summit speaking looks so damn different. And then the last one I had shared was any form of other speaking. So whether that is trainings, guest coaching inside of other coaching programs, memberships, masterminds, group programs, and the like, or whether it is interview style. So, interview within a community, interview, let's say, on a panel in an in person event, or interview on somebody else's podcast. But with those settings, again, you're having that conversation and you're sharing not only your expertise, but also a part of who you are. And that's something, if I didn't mention it before in this tiny little spiel that I just did, well, I'm mentioning it now. Whether it is video or audio, the cool thing about every single one of these is that it's long form content. So it allows you to really dig deeper into whatever it is that you're talking about, whether it's a training where you're specifically teaching people on a subject, on something that you're very well known for, that you're an expert in, or you're just sharing your story, perhaps your journey and some struggles that you had to go through. And then when you turned out on the other side, you experienced this either win or transformation, or you just got to where you wanted to go, right? You reach your goals. And telling those stories can often help people realize that they can do it too, that they perhaps have a similar journey, a similar struggle, and that we're not all that different. Even if you, the speaker, or the coach, the trainer, is now making like millions of dollars and perhaps to some extent they're not as relatable, truly they are, because they've been in your shoes and they still understand in a very deep and personal way what that was like, how that felt, the anxiety, the stress that came from it, and sometimes even the, I was going to say fearlessness. What's that word? Where the hopelessness, right? Where you're like, when am I going to get out of this? But they went through it, and now they're sharing that journey as a way to empower, to motivate, to teach and educate others on one of the ways that they can move past that struggle and reach their own goals and their own version of success. So that's a bit of like a riff slash tangent on that. But what I love about these platforms is that it gives you that connection. It gives you that time to show your true personality, to talk about the topics, to share your journey. And because it almost feels one-on-one, because you have all that time to dive deeper, as opposed to, let's say, just craft like one small caption on a post on social media or post one tiny story on socials, then you actually have the time to develop not only the topic at hand, but then develop that connection with your audience, with your community. And that's what's so freaking impactful, right? So those types of platforms are ones that work really well for me, but it is up to you to figure out, what do you love? How do you show up in a way that feels really easy and fun and exciting, where you're just like, okay, I'm a freaking badass. Like literally feel like I'm a fierce leader right now because I have that confidence. I know what I'm talking about. I feel like everybody consuming this piece of content, regardless of what platform, what method it is literally having all these little aha moments, all these breakthroughs. We want to be able to replicate that confidence. We want to be able to pick different platforms, whether it's marketing platforms, whatever, that are going to allow us to show up as that super amazing expert that people feel connected to and people perhaps even want to invest in. Now, one of the cool things I'll mention about podcasting and why I love it so damn much is not just the fact that, yes, it can be longer form content and it really allows you to like be yourself, be really authentic. Like, you've heard me say this a million times already. Like, I blunder through my words sometimes. Sometimes I can't even think of the right word to say, but that's okay because I've got the time to figure it out and to really get to the point. And it allows me to essentially deliver the content in a way where you truly understand it, as opposed to, I don't know, keeping it very short and dry and professional sounding because you only have 2 slides to share it in before it becomes a ridiculous amount of content that you shared on your stories and nobody's going to want to go and swipe through, right? Instead, you have those 10 minutes, those 20 minutes, that hour if you really want to finally explain what it really means, whatever training, whatever thing you were trying to talk about. So it's not just because of that. So one of the problems that I find with social media, and this is definitely something, by the way, that you can work on if you feel like you're having that same problem, right? Like I work on it constantly because I still love social media. But the problem that can arise through relying on social media almost like solely on that and not having other platforms and other ways to communicate with your community is that it can be a little bit toxic, right? There's a whole concept of the highlight reel where you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody else's success stories when really you don't actually get to see, for the most part, you don't get to see the struggle that is happening, the doubts, the mindset spirals that are happening behind the scenes. Instead, you just see the big wins and all the clients that they're landing and all the money that they're making and how amazing their life is and all that good stuff. Personally, I love to share a little bit of both. I love to share both the struggle and the highlights so it feels a little bit more realistic and I don't feel like I'm faking it. I love to be vulnerable, right? I like to be very honest with you. But a lot of people, it's not that they're doing it maliciously, but they don't necessarily show both sides, or at least they don't share it enough. And fine, that's valid. Like that's social media for you. But the problem becomes that when we start comparing ourselves so intensely against everybody else and everybody else's success, and then we start to doubt ourselves too. And when we start to doubt ourselves, whether it's because of comparison or whether it's because of something else, let's say you're newer in your journey, so you just naturally have some doubts because you haven't seen the success yet to help validate how amazing you are, which that could be something to work on in itself, mindset wise. But when you're in that situation where you're doubting yourself and you're just not as confident, not as sure, then you start to pay attention to things that perhaps don't matter that much, right? We've all been there before. Like, let's be freaking honest right here and right now. We've all looked at our insights on social media. We've all posted something and then checked right away and refreshed notifications to see how many people were liking it, to see if anybody had commented on it. We even just refreshed our social media to see if we have any new DMs, any conversations, any inquiries, any people voting on our story polls, or just reacting and engaging with our content, period. But that can be quite toxic if we start to use that as a measurement of our worthiness, right? So instead of self validating, and instead of just having that internal belief that we are worthy, that we are amazing, and everything we're putting out is freaking epic and is needed, and people are going to enjoy it, find it beneficial, valuable, whatever. Instead of doing that, instead of having that self-belief, we are looking to those metrics. We're looking at our insights on social media to prove that what we're putting out there, and in turn ourselves and our business, are good enough and that they're worthy of people investing in. And it's not really fair. Let's be honest. It's toxic. It's very limiting, right? So instead, the reason I'm bringing that up is I know this is not a solution to that, but it's one of the reasons why I love podcasting so much. Because yes, there are insights. You can totally track who's listening to what, where they're listening from, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not super well versed on the insights behind the scenes, but that shit's available to you. You can totally go ahead and check out how many people have tuned in and download your episodes. However, one, it's not as easily / readily available because it's not a social media platform, right? So typically you're not going to be on your phone clicking on a social media app and going, oh, look how many people have downloaded my most recent episode of my podcast. No, You literally have to like go out of your way, probably open your computer, check the settings behind the scene. It's not something that is on your phone, the one piece of technology that you're on 24 freaking 7, even when you're not working. It's the piece of technology that you're literally scrolling while you're sitting in bed watching Netflix. It's a piece of technology that you are checking for new DMs when you're out for dinner with your loved ones. Instead of enjoying their company, you're freaking glued to it, checking those notifications, checking the insights, and trying to figure out why the hell nobody is reaching out and inquiring about your offers and liking your content and blah, 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 blah. No, podcasting is off your phone, at least when it comes to behind the scenes. So at that point, one, you don't even have that problem to begin with. But two, if you wanted to check your insights, which sometimes I do, not that often, to be totally transparent, like one of the reasons I do check on my insights, like my analytics or whatever you want to call them for podcasting, is because I like to share on my website. I have a landing page that's meant to showcase this podcast. And on there, I like to share what the top viewed, listened, downloaded, rated, whatever you want to call it, episodes, right? So when I go there into my analytics and I see that, let's say there's 3 top podcasts that everybody seems to skip towards as opposed to catching up with older content. They just love this one random one. Actually, it's not random. I remember exactly which one it is. One of the most popular episodes so far that you all love. I don't know what number it is, but it's the 20-hour work week. Y'all are obsessed with that one. So what that tells me is that you all love the idea, whether this is your reality right now or something that you want to make happen and you want to achieve inside of your business, is you want to work less hours. So you're very much the kind of people that want more freedom. You want more balance and harmony in your life. You don't want to be hustling and glued to your phone and your computer 24/7. Instead, you want to be able to create wicked content, serve your clients, and then shut off for the rest of your day. So whether that means 20 hours a week or even less, or maybe a little bit more, you get to choose what that version of freedom looks like, but it is what you want, is what you desire, is what you crave. So in terms of analytics and me getting insight into what works and what doesn't, that tells me, it signals me that creating content around that or creating offers around that, creating trainings around that is going to be beneficial for you. It's going to be something that you deeply desire, that you want, that you're perhaps even out there looking for right now. And it's going to be shit that you're going to be like, holy fuck, Steph, like, thank God, this is exactly what I've been looking for, right? So that is super, super beneficial. So now we're looking at analytics, not from a place of, oh my God, does anybody love me? Am I good enough? But we're looking at analytics from a place of, yes, I am going to serve the shit out of my community because they deserve to know everything that I know about achieving that goal and that version of success. And that is so much more freaking empowering than coming from a place of lack and unworthiness. So that's what I love podcasting. That's why I love speaking, because it's not about building a business where you're glued to your freaking phone. It's about building a business of serving, of impacting, and living your best damn life. That's it for this week's episode of the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at StephWharton_ for more valuable content. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts.